Club Thrive, the podcast with me, Kate Sterling, and a very special guest this week. I'm so delighted to be chatting with the incredible Jo Hooper this week, who is, as in her own words, living a kinder unconventional life. Jo is child-free by choice. She is unmarried by choice. There's a lot of choice and freedom in how Jo lives her life. And she is currently done, as I think many of us are, with the bullshit rules that the world wants us to live by. She has an amazing approach to both business and life that determines our fulfillment as a priority before many other things, including ensuring that health and well-being is at the forefront over burnout and all these horrible things that can come in when we work for ourselves especially. She is proud to hold radically non-judgmental spaces and is very good at calling out bullshit with her incredible series on Instagram that I have definitely loved watching over time, of Bullshit of the Week. Made with a very lovely sing-song tone, I have to say. Absolute joys to watch that. She loves to listen to Harry Potter audiobooks to help her get to sleep, and in her own words, yet again, eating like a middle-aged white van man, toasties over quinoa type of vibe. And, you know, she is the new founder as well. New founder or founder, actually, just founder of Selfish Bitches Invest, which is well, I'll let Jo kind of talk more about that, but this whole concept of putting more money into the hands of child-free women. So there is so much that we're going to explore today on the podcast. And I want to say thank you so much to Jo for coming on with your true, I have to say, unapologetic, refreshingly kind of you version of yourself. Wherever you are, it seems that you are just you in a really great way, in a really refreshing way. And thank you for being that, because it enables all of us to be ourselves in our entirety. Welcome, Jo, to the podcast.
Thank you. Oh my God, that was like an amazing intro. Thank you so much. So glad this is being recorded so that I can listen back.
I feel like it only scratched the surface, to be honest. There is something so joyful about how you approach business and life. And I think that is really the thread that comes into everything that I've seen about the work that you do, and why it was so important to me to have you on the podcast, because I think there is such a narrative around work, around life, around success that really distracts almost from life, especially in this day and age where so much of, if you do work for yourself, it's online. Tell me about that journey to where you are now. Like, what has prompted this unapologetic approach to living fully?
Well, yeah, it's been a journey. So I guess it's worth saying that I never wanted to be self-employed, and I used to work in communications, and like part of the path through the industry was often like you get to a certain point and then you go and set up your own agency, and I never wanted to do that, but I was very good at climbing the ladder, very good at my job, and but what I needed to do that was absolutely run myself into the ground and work myself into two breakdowns to do it. And after I'd hit my big goal of getting a head of comms job by the time I was 30, in the next 18 months I had two mental health crises and basically engineered my own redundancy. I was like, you're going to have to make me redundant in this huge organizational change, and here's how you can do it. I even had a presentation. So wow. I know. Yeah. Yeah. That says something about me back then.
Well, I think that's actually quite a great thing, to be honest. That's that's really owning the decision. I think that's really something to be proud of.
I think also it's like using control as an unhealthy coping mechanism, but you know, it got me a good redundancy package and able to start my own business. So yeah, I basically did everything in my work life that I help people not to do now, and what that led to was me having two successive mental health crises that left me unable to work and really live. And so I guess a huge part of the journey was getting really ill and deciding that I couldn't, or recognizing that I couldn't continue to live and work in the way that I was, and starting my own business. But also I think part of what has made me, I guess, who I am or where I am, is that I my dad died very suddenly when I was 16. I had these mental health crises at 31. And so I feel like I viscerally know more than perhaps many other people that life is very short and you get one go. And why the bloody hell would I spend it miserable? Why would I not spend it the way that I want to? Um, and so I feel like the older I've got, the more that has become really present in my mind and in my work and in the way that I live. Um, because, yeah, why the hell would I waste my one wild and precious life living it the way I don't want to?
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I am so sorry to hear that about your dad. I didn't know that. And I thought I'll see how that comes into the conversation today, because it's interesting when these parts of such a big life story are also, they're so significant, but they also aren't necessarily part of the story. You know, it's not kind of, it is mentioned, you have mentioned it in the past. Like, I'm aware of it because of how it has come into perhaps how you tell your story, but it's not something that you use as the sole reason, which I find fascinating, because some people would have that as the kind of like hero part, in inverted commas, like the lead
Yeah.
of a story. And actually that's kind of like one part of many other parts, which I find quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as well, like it wasn't, you know, losing a parent at 16 was never really factored into my decision making around setting up my own business. It was really about my mental health and my health. And then as my mental health has become more stable, although there's obviously been ebbs and flows over the years, my business has evolved, and my kind of rationale for running my own business and working with people to help them run businesses that don't like trample their entire lives has evolved as well. And I've recognized more and more that, yeah, you get one go round and you ain't here for a long time. So why the hell would you waste it working all the time?
Which is so interesting because, you know, and I really don't want to skirt over the impact that losing a parent at 16 must have had, because you're also going through such a transitional time at 16. I mean, there's so much other stuff going on. And I really just want to kind of acknowledge that and say that, you know, it is amazing that you have then used that to kind of shift your life and have that awareness of when things aren't working so well, to be like, actually, hang on, almost like that re-anchoring of what's important. Do you find that you still come back to that moment in time, almost like not an anchoring, but like a compass? Or do you have your own inner compass that you've now developed because of what happened with your work in that kind of more perhaps environment that wasn't great for you, as that kind of point of knowing now in business what your lines are?
Yeah, I think the all of my experiences, I guess, lead, and for all of us, lead to us developing this inner compass of what we want and what we don't want. But I think for me, because I got so ill and I was so unable to function, like I couldn't brush my teeth or feed myself, like I was so cognitively impaired and so depressed and anxious and just a total wreck, um, that I just know that I am not willing to do anything that will push me towards that anymore. I'm not willing for my life to be ruined by work or taken over by work. And I guess that seems kind of a strange decision to then choose to work for yourself, where, you know, it's all on you in inverted commas. But it is all on me, and I like that because I can make all the choices that I want and I don't have to be subjected to anyone else's choices. And I think my inner compass is really, what do I want? Whereas I think a lot of the people that I work with, their inner compass is often, what should I do? Or what is required from me? Nothing's required from you. You get to choose what is required from you. If a client requires something from you that you don't want to give, you don't have to do it. Like, it's your business. You have all the power and all the choice, and we often forget that. So, yeah, I think my inner compass is really, what do I want? Which is why I'm so kind of unapologetic in the language that I use around, like, you know, my work is about putting you first, the me first method. I've set up this other business with a co-founder called Selfish Bitches Invest, because it's kind of trying to subvert the idea that, you know, to put yourself first is selfish. No one says that about a man. It's entirely a patriarchal construct.
And I honestly, I find this a very interesting kind of identity thing that women can carry. And I'm sure there are men as well. I don't think it's gendered. I think it's kind of the type of person that you are. But the stories and the things that we see as women growing up are definitely geared towards certain things. And I found it very interesting. I don't know if you've had clients that have struggled with this kind of from the financial element of earning money, of earning good money, and of keeping it and not giving it away. So, for example, the last couple of years for me, since becoming a parent, I don't know what happened to me, because I used to be like, I don't watch the news, all this kind of stuff, and I've been so impacted by the global news the last couple of years that it has made me feel I've had to face up to so much stuff around earning money and keeping it, because I got to a point almost like what you were saying about work, but with money, where I was like, hang on, if I keep living how I'm living, I will actually run out of money. Like, that is just the pattern that will happen, which is obviously one of those big fears that a lot of business owners has that stops them from taking risk in the first place. And I was like, what is going on here? And I unpacked it and I was like, I feel financially responsible for, and like emotionally responsible almost, for everyone in the world who's suffering. And it's so fascinating because everyone seems to have a very different approach to this. And I'm interested whether you've worked with people who have had those challenges, that you've also had to kind of say, you will not be able to sustain your life unless you hold on to some of the things that you are creating for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I feel like there are kind of, well, there are multiple aspects to it, but one is that experience that you had of like, God, I have to do something about all the shit that's going on in the world, and like that just isn't possible. Like, yes, we can obviously contribute in ways that are energetically, emotionally, and financially sustainable for us, and we all have to choose and figure out for ourselves what we're able to do that is emotionally, financially, and energetically sustainable for us. And those of us who actually give a shit about the world will often overgive in those ways, and like you experienced, get to the point where you're like, actually, I'm helping others to the detriment of myself. And as you mentioned, like, that can be a financial thing, or it can be an energetic, emotional thing as well. And I see that a hell of a lot in clients where my clients care about their clients. And so they think, okay, well, I need to respond to them at 11 o'clock at night. I need to squeeze them in. I need to do this. But you don't. You get to choose what your boundaries are and the ways that you work. And you cannot sustain helping others at the detriment of yourself, whether that's financially, energetically, emotionally, time-wise. But financially, something that I often see with, and I predominantly work with women, a lot of the people that I work with are often trying to keep their prices low to stay affordable, in inverted commas. And like, that is just not something that anyone can ever do, because you can't know what anyone else's affordability is. And people's affordability changes month to month. And for the vast majority of us, there are, of course, a lot of people in the world who don't have the financial resources to feed themselves, clothe themselves, get a roof over their heads. But for those of us who can do that and have disposable income, how we spend that is a choice. And it's not always that we can't afford to buy this pen. It's that I choose to buy this hand cream over buying that pen. And that's a choice I make about how I spend my money. And a lot of people that I work with get caught up in this idea of trying to be affordable to people, but they can never know whether they are affordable. And by trying to make themselves affordable for other people, they make their business financially unsustainable for themselves. So, yeah, I think the idea, which I hear you, there is like, whatever your gender, there will be people who feel this way, but it is a heavily gendered thing for women, because women are taught that to be good women, we need to be selfless and pliant and kind and nurturing. And so I see it very much in my female clients.
You must see like such a shift in a client who has come in to work with you with that mentality or the energy or the kind of unstructured boundaries in a way around their time, energy, money. Because I think the same as you, like, these things are all energetic resources almost that we have to leverage and play with. You must see such a shift with people when they start to work with you, and then they start to realize that they can introduce those kind of rates they deserve to kind of charge, have some extra boundaries, actually have a life. And you must see them through like the wobbles of that and the panic and the kind of, and the sheer like, oh my God, and then the surviving of it. And they're like, oh, this is great. Like, do you see, is that the kind of transition that you see?
Yes, yeah, it's really interesting. So the main way that I work with clients at the moment is through my group program, the Me First Accelerator, and a part of it is lots of audio interventions. So things that people listen to, because the people that I work with have so little time because they're so overworked, that I've tried to make it as easy for them to access as possible. Anyway, one of my clients in that said the other day, I feel like I'm unraveling so much about the way that I work. And so I recorded this new intervention called The Great Unraveling. And it's like, this is normal. You're getting rid of a load of beliefs that you thought you had to work by, and you're bringing in new things. And we're starting to re-ravel now. The re-ravel is happening. Don't worry. But yeah, I do, like that same client was like, oh my God, I can actually like go to the gym and take a Friday off. This is revolutionary. And I actually find it quite a confronting thing when clients tell me, and they have multiple times, that like our work has literally changed their lives. Like, I find that a very difficult thing to hear from people, because I'm like, oh, come on, like, I find that hard to pick up and hold, which is why I'm saying it today, because it will help me to hold it. But it really does. Like, you don't have to work all the time. You can say no to things. You can set your prices and arrange your services so that you don't have to work 7 days a week. And when people start to take the action to make that happen, they're like, whoa, this is wild.
And I loved that moment just then that you just shared. Thank you so much for sharing your own kind of openness to change too, because I think it's this reminder that we're constantly discovering things of like, oh, hang on, I feel a bit uncomfortable about that, or I'm resisting that a little bit, and okay, I'm going to allow it in. And this really important concept of being open to receiving on the same level of giving.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think it's also people in like our sorts of jobs where it is a lot of, my work requires a lot from me emotionally, energetically, and that's part of why I run my business the way I do, is because I can't see 10 clients a day, because I'd be done in and I'd be a shit coach for the last 7. So you're right. I think it is, I find it anyway, hard to hold and integrate and own, for want of a better word, like things that clients share with me when like our work has been so impactful. But you're right, I can receive those things as well as offer them to others.
We will all own it with you today, Jo. Like, thanks. Everyone listening at home is honouring that and reflecting it back and saying yes, because it's the same thing about compliments, isn't it? So like when someone says, your jumper's lovely, and then we'll say something just ever so slightly self-deprecating of, oh, well, look at the stain on it, or like drawing attention to
I found it on the floor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I picked it off from the charity shop bag. Like, it kind of, and which is nothing wrong, because we've all shopped at charity shops. It's just to say that we kind of can really find fault in ourselves at the discomfort of owning that we might actually not have fault.
Yeah. Blimey, I'm going to have to write that down and journal on that later.
Don't you worry, I'll be sending you some prompts after. Which is part of the joy, though, of this work, I think. Yeah, you're so welcome. Everyone at home's like, well, what? But this kind of, as there's always this story I tell around all of this about the pricing thing too, of like really building all of this work up and owning that boundary of pricing in the discomfort of owning it, and learning too, because it's not like we have to be fixed. Like, there's often other stuff that comes in around whether it is the physical reaction that we have to owning more, having more money, or charging more, or whatever. But I always remember the story of like someone saying they couldn't afford to work with me, so I lowered my prices, and then I found out that they were having a kitchen renovation, like a complete and utter, like, we're not talking 5k, we're talking like they did the whole thing, and it was like, I don't know, God knows how much kitchen renovation takes, but like at least 20 or 30k, I would think. I was like, yeah, it was such an important lesson, but it's so uncomfortable for us to sit through that. And I just wonder, like, when people come to work with you and they really, really resist, like, how do you navigate that with someone? Is it through things like the audible kind of content that they can listen to, or is it actually that sometimes they don't change, and like you have to kind of acknowledge that too, like someone isn't actually willing to change. Or has that actually never happened because your work gets into them in a way that actually opens up the back box?
I think it's never happened because by the time people come to work with me, they know they want to change. And like I'm very clear in my content and in my marketing and in the way that I am in the world, like I'm just myself, that like you're not going to get mollycoddled by me. And I think that's how I navigate it with people is I just ask them very direct questions. Like, do you want to continue with your business the way it is now? No. Okay. So we need to change something. And I'll ask them more kind of exploratory questions around like, what is it that's draining you? And they kind of feel like they don't know and they just sort of word vomit at me. And I can see that like, okay, well, what I'm hearing is these consistently drain you. So we need to change these things. And so my way of helping them to figure out what needs to change and take the action to do it is someone called it empathy with an edge. Like lovingly ask them
like it.
quite I know, I was like, oh thanks, I'll take that. Lovingly and openly asking them, but like quite hard questions. And I think you know that that's what you're going to get when you come to work with me if you've seen anything about me online or anything of me talking online. And I purposefully I'm very open. There are very few things that I don't share about myself or there's nothing I don't share about my work, but I'm very open online purposefully so that you know what you're going to get when you work with me. You should be going into it with open eyes, or as you do with anyone. Like if you're spending your money, you want to know what you're going to like, what the experience is going to be like. But yeah, no, I think your point about are people willing to change is really interesting because I think I've been in relationships in my personal life where you so desperately want someone to change because you know it would benefit them, but they don't want to, or they're not able to at that point, or they can't see that. And like, that isn't a healthy dynamic. Like for me to want someone to change and they don't want to, like that isn't the sort of dynamic that I want to bring into my work. So I'm never ever gonna say to someone, you need to do this, or like, I want you to do X. I will help them to see what they want to do. And if they don't want to do it, then that's totally up to them.
I think it's this, like you say, this level of self-accountability and being open to change. And yes, of course,
Yeah.
there's going to be moments where there'll be resistance in that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, unfortunately, like we are the only ones that can change. And I say this quite a lot, actually. You know, there's a lot of, even if we look at things like the economy and we look at things like how people get work and all this kind of stuff, there can be a lot of stories that we start to tell ourselves about, well, that's not possible because I'm not that person, or this has happened for them because of this. And it's so complicated because it's not to say that we don't find ourselves in challenging positions in life, whether that's financially, emotionally, stability wise, like grief, you know, all of these things can be totally destabilizing. The uncomfortable thing is that actually, in theory, especially, you know, where we are in the world, is that pretty much almost everything is overcomable. Do you find that you have a mindset of that now, where you're like, well, I've overcome such incredible change, adversity, challenge, that anything is overcomable now?
No, I don't think I do. I think I'm very focused about what I'm willing to try and overcome. So like I am not going to waste my time, energy, life pushing against a closed door. I'm not going to so something that I've talked about a lot and you mentioned earlier around like how subsumed we can become in what's going on in the world and the news. And so I used to work in communications. I was literally plugged in at the veins to the news from like 6 a.m. till midnight when the front pages dropped. And basically I consumed enough news in 10 years for 3 lifetimes. So since I stopped working in communications and finished my corporate career, I have made the choice not to engage in the news traditionally. I don't watch the TV news. I don't buy newspapers. I don't engage in the news. That doesn't mean I don't engage in the world, but it means I choose how to how and where to find my information about the world and how I engage in it, because I am not willing to spend my life miserable about everything that's going on in the world. I am willing to learn about stuff that's going on in the world, and I have done throughout my life, through my education and through the people that I choose to like spend time with and talk to and expand my understanding of the world. And I'm willing to like do what I feel that I can do to help in ways and in places that I feel I can help without causing enormous detriment to myself and my life. And I know that that isn't the kind of giving, nurturing way that we should, in inverted commas, be. But I'm not willing to spend my life miserable and angry. And so I really choose where my energy goes. And I think it's because I have, like had some really shitty experiences in my life. Now I know that the way I live is largely a series of choices that I make. And so I want to make the choices that feel right to me, even if they don't seem right to the rest of the world.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think it's so refreshing. And I think this idea that actually we're not necessarily invincible, right? We can actually have emotions and challenges and stress and anxiety, even if we are, in theory, on paper, like high achieving, high performing, out there.
Oh God, you're more likely to have
Actually,
stress and
we're very
anxiety
human.
if you're high achieving.
Totally. And that's the irony in a way as well, isn't it? That actually we have to allow those parts of us in to be able to achieve and create the success or the life or the business, whatever it is, that actually is that extension of us and as of the kind of people that we are. Do you find ever that when people come to work with you, they have accidentally created an image of success that is someone else, and now they don't even have a clue about who they are anymore? Like their identity as well is completely up in the air.
Yes, so much of the time. Like, one of the things I will often ask people is like, how do you want to spend your time? Like, how do you want to spend your week? And they're like, well, on a Tuesday I have this service that I do, and on a Thursday I have all these clients. And I'm like, no. Pretend that none of that existed. How do you want to spend your time? And they're like, oh, I don't really know. And often we have to go through a process of like, what do you like? Like, how do you feel? How do you want to feel? And what is it that makes you feel that way? And what is it that takes you away from feeling that way? And so, absolutely, so many of us, and I've definitely fallen down that rabbit hole at points in my life as well, where you're like, oh, I'm chugging forwards to this thing and I'm really striving and searching and going for this thing, and you're like, oh shit, I don't actually like that thing. Or like, what, you get to the thing and you're like, oh well, what now? And you never, if you put off happiness, or if you put off choice, or if you put off the things that you want, you will never get to the point of allowing yourself to give yourself those things. You've got to like start doing it now. Otherwise, what's your bloody life for?
Totally. And actually there's quite a bit of courage in that, isn't there? This idea that actually you know enough as an individual to trust yourself enough to create it, and that it will also be validated. Because I think a lot of the time, especially like you say, the narratives around being a woman and all this kind of stuff that we see, and all that inherent misogyny or patriarchy or whatever it is that feeds into our choices, there is also this idea that we will survive being different, which is so fascinating. And I find it really refreshing that you're open, for example, around this child free by choice. Was that a process, if I'm okay to ask about it for free? You don't have to answer any personal questions here, but the process to that, was that quite a short process, or was that a decision that you took over a longer period of time?
I think it's a decision that I always knew. I don't ever remember thinking, I want kids, I want to be a mum, I can see this future for myself. I think it's a decision that I had, I don't know when I made it. It was just something that I always knew. But the process came in telling other people. So my mum and my aunt, who said things to me like, oh, but who's going to look after you when I'm old? I was like, well, people that I pay, because we should be just having kids so they'll look after us when we're old, because I'm certainly not going to be looking after you two. But yeah, telling my family and having that conversation with my boyfriend. So we'd been together 13 and a half years. And I remember at the beginning of our relationship and we started to get more serious, I was like, well, maybe we just won't talk about it. And then I'll become barren. And then we just, for so long, we won't talk about it for so long that I'll just become infertile and then it'll be fine. And I was like, no, I don't think that's the way that we should handle this. So I remember like being in a pub, sitting in a pub garden and like broaching the conversation with him. I think we'd been together maybe a couple of years by then, so I was in my like mid to late 20s. And thankfully he was with me, that he didn't want kids either. And he doesn't want to get married. So we're like just living in sin with no offspring.
You did 10 out, well,
other than
you did. Oh, well, yeah. And you did 10 out of 10 on your manifesting there of like creating that connection with someone who also wanted the same things. Well done. High five,
Yeah.
Joe. But sorry, and I didn't mean to cut you off there. The animals, obviously, there is something here about connection and enjoyment of life and fulfillment in, you know, I always think about you have your 4-day weekend. You've designed that by choice. When it comes to designing how you do live now, you know, you were talking before around energy drainers, for example. Like, how would someone who is quite new to this concept of actually taking life for themselves and having these difficult conversations with a partner, because some of us actually haven't, and it's actually a big part of relationships that we're not taught about at school.
Yeah.
The challenging moments of communicating what we want. That's really scary. How do you, or how can someone know whether it is an energy drain, for example, like even just a thought of, do I want children? Like that can actually drain a lot of energy if we're worrying about something, for example. Like, how do you broach that with clients when, or people or friends or whoever, to help them identify what is draining their energy versus what is giving them energy?
That's a really good question, because you kind of, I guess sometimes we assume that people know how something makes them feel. So how I would get into it with a client is like, how do you want your business to feel? For example, if we're talking about business, how do you want your business to feel? I want it to feel fun and exciting, and yeah, like there to feel like there's momentum. I want it to feel fun and exciting. Okay, so then I would ask them like, what situations have you been in, or what people have you been around, or what have you been doing when it's felt fun, exciting, and like there's momentum? And then I would be asking them the opposite, like, what situations have you been in? What moments can you think of in the last few weeks? What people have you been around? What have you been doing when it's not felt exciting, or it's not felt fun, or it's not felt like there was momentum? And quite often they'll come up with, oh, it's this one particular client, or like there'll be something that, and it's often about a client. And then we'll use that to think about, okay, well, why did it not feel exciting? Oh, because it felt really hard. Why did it feel hard? What made it feel hard? And we sort of kind of dig a bit deeper and explore that. And sometimes it might not be like, oh, you just need to get rid of that one client. It might be that it felt hard because the client was in touch with them in 3 different places and it felt really overwhelming. And so, okay, well, we need a boundary around how clients get in touch with you. Or it might have felt hard and not exciting because they just weren't enjoying the work. Okay, well, you don't have to do that anymore. Like, we can just cut that out of your services.
Do people go, what?
So, yeah, and they're like, oh. Sometimes I feel like I'm the anti-coach, because most coaches are like, get fully booked, get booked up. And I'm like, sack them, just get rid of the ones you don't like. Not everyone is meant to work together.
But that's why it's so refreshing, I think, because as you were talking there, just there is just such a focus and intention that I think you have on really seeing the person before the business and understanding where the business or the career is helping versus hindering. And that real lens being shone on how people want to work versus, like you say, what the coaching industry says, like what the marketing industry says, what friends or family say. And really honouring, sometimes we might try stuff and it doesn't work, but at least you've done it in alignment with yourself. Have you found in your own building of your business that there have been moments where you have found that you've realised that you've actually accidentally, without realising it, potentially built something that has been because of what we now see so viscerally online as success? Or are you able to, I mean, I'm sure probably now you're able to catch that a lot sooner, but do you still have to play that game yourself where you're like, oh, I've got this idea, is that what I want, or is that because that's what I've seen?
I think I don't think I get to the point of building something. I think I can see through my own bullshit pretty quickly now. But I think I have tried uh, ways of doing things, or like marketing ideas, or um, processes. Like, sometimes you kind of not follow someone else's blueprint, but take someone else's advice. Um, but you need to figure out how to do it in your way. And I have definitely like taken the advice of a coach or a mentor, started down that road and started to feel like, oh well, this all feels a bit clunky, like not in logistically, but in terms of like energetically in me, like, oh, it all feels a bit clunky, or oh, I don't really want to talk about that, as in I don't want to promote it. And that's when I'm like, oh hello, something, this is not feeling right, like I need to. And often what I'll do is like go back to a blank piece of paper and be like, okay, well, how do I want to do it? And it's often similar to, like, if I'm thinking about this example, it's similar to the way that the advice that I've taken would recommend, but it's in my way, and it so it feels totally different to me. And it makes me think about, so I'm really into sewing, and I do have a point here, there is a connection, I promise. I'm really into sewing and sewing my own clothes and bags and things, but I find it so incredibly hard to follow a pattern or follow instructions. Like, there's definitely something in my brain that cannot translate pattern pieces onto fabric. But if I draw the pattern myself, it's fine. Like, I can look at a jacket. I've got a jacket up here that's embroidered. I can look at a jacket and see, like, okay, well, I can see where the seams are. I can see where the panels are. I can, like, measure it out, draw the pattern, and then make a duplicate. I'm not saying I could do it overnight, but I could certainly do it over some time. But I couldn't read the instructions of how someone made that and then turn it into a pattern and do it myself. Like, I need to do it my way. And that might take longer, or it might not look like how someone else would do it, or I might do little workarounds that work for me but wouldn't work for somebody else. But yeah, I know that I need to do it my way. And I've definitely like got a few steps down that road before and been like, oh no, this don't feel right. But I've never got to the point of like 10 years down the road with a business working the way a guru told me it should and be like, oh dear. I've never got to the point of it being out in the world.
Which is such self-awareness. And as you were talking there, I was like, God, that's just fascinating, because actually that's the thread that seems to play through a lot of your life, actually, is this idea that you don't follow the rules. Like, if someone presents to you with something, it's like, oh, I don't know about that. Like, all of your work is around this idea that we don't have to follow rules, but it's not that we don't respect guidelines or rules or things. It's not actually about being detrimental, because I think for many women especially, there is this fear of rebellion or of owning being different, and of saying it's actually okay to take a bit longer, to do it a bit different, to not look like anyone else, but to kind of have a great result at the end of it, because of that need to almost be going against the grain of the status quo. How do you kind of broach that with, life outside of work as well, when you have moments of stress or challenge? How do you actually sit with a lot of that to say, okay, well, how can I just allow myself to get through this time and look after myself?
Yeah, it's something that I like constantly grapple with. Like, yes, my mental health is in a much better place, but I still see a therapist. Still take meds, which I sort of fluctuate up and down the dose depending on like whether I need it, obviously in consultation with a doctor who knows what I should be doing. I'm not just like, oh, I'll take double today, see how it goes. I mean, I'm not averse to that, but no, it is something that I do really grapple with. It's like sitting with difficult emotions and sitting with difficult situations, and something that I've been working on particularly over the last few years in my life is like growing my tolerance for discomfort, because not that we should be sitting in situations that make us uncomfortable, but we all come up against points and things in our lives that make us feel a way that we don't want to feel, and sometimes you can't change that immediately. Sometimes that discomfort has to be sat with, because the situation isn't changeable, or you need to get to a point where you are ready to make the change, or just because, something happens and it makes you feel sad and you can't get rid of that sadness immediately. So for me, it's a lot of just stopping, slowing, being in bed, reading a book, doing my sewing, and listening to actually what do I need right now, which sometimes is different to what do I want. And like knowing
Yes, such a help. Yeah, I was going to say that's such a helpful differentiation. How would you define the differentiation between what you need and what you want?
So if I think about being in a situation where, I need to sit in discomfort for a minute or many minutes, what I want is to get out of that situation. What I want is to distract from the discomfort. But what I need is to be resourced to sit with the discomfort. And for me, that is probably being on my own, but in an environment where I feel safe. So like in my own home, where I know my boyfriend is here, but I can be in a room on my own. It's like feeling physically cocooned, so I'm probably going to want to get in bed. It's either having something to focus on that allows that discomfort to be there, but gives me something else to focus on, so I'm not constantly ruminating on that discomfort. So it might be like watching a comfort program, or it might be like, if I feel able to, like reading a comfort book or listening to an audio book if I don't feel able to like process the written words in front of me. So I guess the difference for me personally is, if what I want is to run away from the thing, it's probably not what I need. But that's for me personally, because I know that I can be emotionally avoidant and want to get away from the hard emotion. Whereas I know that I want to be able to experience and hold those emotions. And so I know that I need to, in that moment, like resource myself to be able to do that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it really feeds into this bigger picture as well that so many ambitious individuals have around this idea of rest and allowing things to pass, to be being seen as like lazy, unproductive, not worthy of the time, we don't have time, like this kind of narrative that also feeds into, women's lives of everything runs around a clock and everything has to look a certain way, and actually to abolish a lot of that, to say, well, actually that time that you can give for yourself to nurture, to reconnect, to process, is incredibly important for the sustainability of anything, like whether we're talking life or business, like it's all part of the same ecosystem. Like
if you like, the kind of light, silly, irreverent way of saying it is like, if you don't have time to go for a fucking piss, have a glass of water and eat some lunch. What are you doing? Something needs to change. But the depth of that is, your life can pass you by. If you don't have time to actually live your life, then something has to change. Unless you are choosing that. And if you are choosing that, I'm asking you why you're choosing that. What are you not choosing to have that? Do you really want your life to be this way for the next 10 years? Because we have to have time to live. Like, it can't just be about work. That cannot be how our life is. No, thank you.
It's actually quite incredible though, how even that, you saying that, I'm like, yeah, my God, we are so drilled the opposite as being true. Like, we are so drilled the fact that we are here to be productive and that we are here to create certain things. And, I've just seen your site. I've actually can properly read your site, your poster at the back there that says do epic shit. Not ship, do epic shit. And this kind of concept of like, live your life fully, like, take the 4-day weekend. Do you ever get people asking you like, but what do you do with all that time? Like this idea that we normally try to squeeze our life into the bits that are left, rather than building a business and life around our life.
Yes. I had a client once say to me like, how can I rest more productively? I was like, mate, that's something we need to talk about on another day. But yeah,
that's the point we're at, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Like, You know, when we're recording this, it was about 3 weeks ago where like just the internet stopped working, the Amazon server went down, and like Canva stopped working, Instagram stopped working, WhatsApp stopped working, and people were freaking out like, okay, how can I be productive offline? And I was like, have a biscuit, sit down and stare into space, or read a book, or just sleep. Like, you don't have to be productive every flipping minute of the day. But yeah, I guess like, you know, I choose not to have kids, and part of that is because I want to explore the world and I don't want to be hindered in that, and I want to spend my time the way I want to spend it, and I like a lot of time to myself, and I like a lot of time not being productive. And so I think, yeah, to someone whose life is incredibly regimented or incredibly full and every moment is full, I think my life probably does look quite lazy, and I'm okay with that. And also, like, lazy isn't really a thing. Lazy is only a thing in contradiction to the idea that we need to be productive every minute of every day. So yeah, definitely, I think people are like, what are you bloody doing with yourself? And I'm like, just about reading, going to the garden
Having a glass of wine in front of the fire.
Having a glass of wine in front of the fire, putting a record on. It's quite nice. In fact, it's lovely.
I think it's so fascinating, the discomfort that people have actually in living sometimes. And I'm so grateful to you today for really being honest about the joy of living and the pertinence of it. And this idea actually that we get to see time how we choose to see it. Like, we can see it as something that we have to kind of make the most of in a negative way, or we can see it in a way of like making the most of time in a way that's insanely fulfilling and impactful and kind of exciting, like an adventure as possible, alongside the lumps and bumps of life which have come along. And is this partly why you also decided to set up Selfish Bitches Invest? Because there's something in this about the longevity of this lifestyle. There's something in this about like, I want to keep living like this literally until I was about to sound very morbid then, but until like literally,
we're all going out in a box.
Literally until I don't wake up one day. Like, I want to live it as fully as possible, as big as possible, as a kind of in depth as possible of the human experience. Is that something that fed into this idea, or was it just that you were just fed up of like women not feeling like they had money?
So where the idea came from is I was looking for investment advice, and all traditional investment advice is based on being married and having kids and building a financial legacy and building generational wealth. And I don't give a shit about generational wealth. I want to spend all my money in my lifetime because I want to have a lovely time. So I want to know, how do I invest to get good returns within my lifetime? And no one could tell me. There was not one page on the whole internet that could tell me how child-free women should invest. My co-founder and I have done, largely my co-founder, has done mystery shopping, calling IFAs and asking for advice on how you would invest, how you would advise a child-free person to invest. And do you know what they've said to her and her male partner? They've said, you'll probably change your mind, so we're going to plan for a future with children anyway, and we're going to plan conservatively. And so child-free women are not just underserved, but entirely unserved in the financial advice market and financial education. And so it came from just this sense of huge injustice when trying to look for information myself. And we're planning to go for investment next year, and we've heard from hundreds of child-free women. We've got a survey on our Instagram page asking child-free women about their experience with financial advice and other areas. And we know that this is a huge market that is entirely unserved. And so we want to help put more money in the hands of child-free women in their lifetime, or in whatever way they want. But we should be able to access advice about what to do with our money and not be excluded from it because of our life choices. So yeah, it really came from wanting to find the advice myself, not finding it, getting really fucking angry about it, and then realising, hang on a minute, there's a huge problem here. and we're going to get investment, build that business and exit it, and then have a lovely retirement. That's the plan.
I mean, it sounds great. I mean, I think it's going to happen because, as they say, some of the best businesses are built from things that weren't there for the founder. And I honestly find that mind blowing because also, there are many women who actually would love to have children who can't. And it doesn't mean that their life also can't be fantastic. I think there's this real thing. And I love this kind of concept of how can we still have a great life, a thriving life, in spite of things sometimes actually not going as we thought they would. Like there can be huge grief and pain that comes from life when it changes or challenges us like that. And what you're offering for people who either choose it or in a position where they've had that choice taken away a little bit, to still live the best life possible. Because as you say, why not? Like just because there is perhaps this challenge, adversity, difference, it does not mean that life has to then not be the most incredible life. And actually it can be the reason why you have an even better life as a result of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like from my perspective, people who make the choice to live in a different way, I choose to not be married, I choose to not have children. Why should I be penalised for that just because I make choices that a large proportion of society think I'm mad? Like I should be able to make those choices and live the life that I want. And as you say, for those women who've had that choice made for them by circumstance or situation, like that doesn't mean that your life is then a write-off. Like at the point at which you feel ready to explore what your life can look like, you should be able to do that in a financially resourced way, and with advice and education and support that allows you to understand what that life can look like and what you can do with it, particularly financially. Just because the world doesn't want to admit that some women are abominations and don't want children, it doesn't mean that we don't exist. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to figure out what we want to do with our money with some advice.
Yeah, I think there's this real autonomy that I just love. Like you get to choose how you run your business. You get to choose how you live your life. You get to choose your relationships. And you also get to walk away from people, places, things that do not enrich your life in some way without actually having to feel bad about that, or at least processing the guilt that you might feel as you walk away. But that ultimately we are the ones who get to choose how we live our life. And what an amazing thing that you have given us today with that real reminder and almost like the permission. Like I'm feeling quite galvanized. I'm a bit like, yes, what can I go out there and like, and so thank you for that, because I think it's not a message that is often hammered home. And this idea that actually we can be different, we can rebel, and actually it can be very nurturing, holistic and sustainable and fulfilling. There is a question that I ask everyone on this podcast, and it is, who are you and what are you doing when you are thriving?
Oh, I think I am generally talking. I'm a verbal reasoner and I make sense of the world by talking. I think I'm thriving when... I certainly think I'm thriving when I'm coaching people, because I love it and I find it so fascinating, like seeing how people work, how people think, how people speak, how people move, and what I can tell that means about what they want. And I love that I can see that in them even if they can't see that for themselves. But I would also say that I'm thriving when I'm exploring new places in the world. My boyfriend and I love weird places like Central Asia, and I love seeing how the world is in different places, and I love like getting to explore that and seeing places and exploring places and then talking about it with my boyfriend and looking at pictures that we've taken and things that we've brought back from places. And I think, I'm probably thriving the most when I am in some random weird country in the world like the Republic of Georgia or Uzbekistan, and seeing what life in the world is like outside of the bubble that we all live in.
Jo, thank you so much for sharing that, and what a privilege to have that message that we can build businesses and careers businesses that give us that time and space and financial stability and freedom, especially if you are someone who is choosing to be different. So how can people come and join your Me First Accelerator, find out more about you, like what are the deets?
So I'm always wanging on about this stuff on Instagram. So I'm Get Wildly Free on Instagram, and all my links are there. But yeah, I'm primarily chatting gubbins on there and sometimes on LinkedIn, but Instagram is my place.
And I will make sure, of course, to put all of those links in the show notes. And I highly recommend you follow Jo. Like, your sense of humour, Jo, alongside the realities and the practicalities and the work, because let's face it, sometimes we do have to actually put in the effort too, is just such a wonderful balance. So thank you so much for bringing that like refreshing edge to social media, because it helps other coaches, founders, people like me to own our own uniqueness too. So thank you for that. The impact,
Thank you, that's really kind.
seeps out more than maybe you might realise at times.
Thanks. Yeah, that's lovely.
You're welcome. Is there anything that you would like to share, get off your chest, ensure is left in this episode before we close?
Yeah, just like remember that you have so much more choice than you realize. So start making ones that you want to be making. And also two small but large things. So we talked a little bit about living life to the full, and that doesn't have to be jumping out of planes, going on roller coasters, like doing mad shit. It can be sitting in your pajamas at 11 o'clock in the morning, having a cup of tea and watching Bake Off. Like, that is how often I choose to spend my time, and what living my life looks like, and living my life the way I want to looks like. Living life to the full doesn't have to be this like extreme mad shit. It can be exactly what you want it to be, and that can be small and beautiful. And the last thing I wanted to say is I do listen to Harry Potter every night to go to sleep. I know that J.K. Rowling is not a good person, but I have been listening to it every night for like 20 years, and I have really bad anxiety, and that is just what I have to do to manage my anxiety and get to sleep. So I'm in no way endorsing her. I'm just endorsing whatever you got to do to manage your own mental health.
And thank you for sharing that, because I think now in this ever like polarizing world, I think it's really, we carry so much anxiety as business owners actually at sharing some stuff sometimes. And I think for anyone listening who holds back as well in business because of the worry of that, I think you're not alone. And I think it's really helpful that we can just say things like that. And actually there's no judgment, and it's just facts. And, you know, I know that as a business owner, it has hindered my business massively also by trying to speak to everyone, trying to not offend anyone, and then not cutting through also the noise. So thank you for sharing that, Jo, because I think it's just that reminder that we can carry so much extra stress and the worry about it, and that, you know, let's just keep talking about it, because it's not like it's so unhelpful.
Yeah, and you can't be the perfect person all the time. Like, yeah, I don't want to be endorsing J.K. Rowling. She has done and said a load of really bad shit. But you know what? I have a coping mechanism that helps me to get to sleep, and sleep is really important. And so sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that, you know, and I also was the same with those stories, that, you know, like, it's so complicated. I think the times we live in now are very complicated, and the most important thing is that we do look after our mental health. We can't, you know, everyone, like, we literally can't. This is what is exhausting and burning out so many business owners and individuals and people who are caring. So if you're listening at home, you're not alone in all of this stuff that we carry in our heads, but just put it down today and choose to breathe and go read your book, whatever book it is, with your cup of tea, with your wine, and just take that moment to connect with yourself, and a biscuit and a cake and some brownies, whatever it is, and a pizza, all at the same time in front of the fire, and just keep looking after yourself, please, and keep doing what you want with your life. I think that's the vibe from this episode today. So Jo, thank you so much. I'll make sure to put all of the details. Go follow Jo, she's brilliant. I love her. Her work is fantastic. If you're a business owner, you must check out what she's doing. It will be an absolute game changer for you. And if you have liked this podcast episode today, please do share it with a friend, or give it a like, give us a follow, give us a review. It all helps build out this idea that as people and as women, we get to choose the life we live too. So thank you, Jo, and thank you for listening, and have a great